Movie time with John DeSando and his friends online. So everything is gonna be just fine. From the top down to the bottom. He's gonna let you know if you should stay home or if you should go. Might even yell if it's a spectacle. From San Francisco to Long Island. 'Cause nothing's better than a motion video.
It's Movie Time is produced and hosted by John DeSando. Listen to shows and read reviews online at WCBE.org.
I'm John DeSando,
And I'm Kevin Carr.
and this is This Movie Time. Now I wonder if I could make a corny joke about the title of this film, If.
Why not?
So Kevin, if you had to see this movie, which you did,
Yeah.
it's not from Disney, and then you're a Disney guy.
I've heard people compare it to sort of like the conceptual idea of like a Pixar type movie.
Yes,
But no,
right.
It's a Paramount, I think.
Oh,
Isn't it?
okay, all right,
Paramount.
yeah. And so it's a kiddie film.
Yeah, definitely a kids film. It's a family film. It's and that's the thing, because there haven't been a ton of family films in the theater lately. Like you had Migration, which came out at Christmas,
Gosh.
and that just sort of came in under the radar. But there was nowhere to take a kid to the theaters for the first couple weeks or months of 2024. Then it ended up making a decent amount of money because it was kind of like the only game in town.
I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. I haven't seen anything in a long time.
There haven't been a whole bunch of cartoons or anything like that. Now, of course, you got Garfield coming up next weekend,
That's right,
so
yeah.
it's going to provide
Which
some.
you've already seen, and
Yeah.
it's probably recommended for families.
It's Garfield.
Okay.
So.
Right. But this is not strictly cartoon.
No, well, yeah, I mean, it's not a cartoon, but it has animated characters in it. It's a hybrid. It's what you get a lot of these nowadays, where you have CGI characters. I mean, we've come a long way from Roger Rabbit.
Well, people who unfortunately aren't seeing our video can't see your imaginary friend, but as you would smartly say, who cares, because they're imaginary.
I brought along an imaginary friend. I think unfortunately they weren't able to sell tickets to the Imaginary Friends. You could have really increased the box office.
They could have filmed
Well, if
the
that
theater.
kid's coming to the theater, it's got to pay twice.
So the title is If, and it means it's short for imaginary friend.
Yes.
So what's this? What's the deal? What's the conceit here?
The basic story is it's this girl who she's 12, 13.
12.
She's right on that cusp of
Yeah.
going into adolescence, and her mother has died, and her father's in the hospital. They don't exactly say why, but he's in there for some sort of procedure.
It was heart.
It's something with his heart, but
Did they say the broken heart?
he says broken heart. But I think
You're
that's a little bit I think metaphorical. But they don't. It's not like he's going in for a transplant or something. But they don't get into that. But it's the anxiety the girl's feeling that going through the same motions where her father's in the hospital, and so she goes and lives with her grandmother while this is happening in New York. And there's this. She runs into this guy in the building who is basically running a placement agency for imaginary friends whose children have grown up and are looking for new friends.
And perfectly cast as Ryan Reynolds. Right?
Yeah, Ryan Reynolds plays the guy
Yeah.
who's the head of this, and you got like Phoebe Waller-Bridge doing the voice. I mean, she's cast, and I'm sure they did some sort of performance capture, but she plays like this old-fashioned sort of big marionette type doll.
Yeah, right.
And then there's this big furry thing that looks like Grimace from McDonald's.
Yeah, right. Really, I thought kind of, I don't know what to say, kind of awkward, I thought, as a character. I wasn't able to catch his real lovability.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, there is a great sort of rogues gallery of these imaginary friends, and they're all voiced by famous people, because you can do that with animated stuff, because you can bring them into a recording booth for a morning. Like got Sam Rockwell as a flying raccoon, and Emily Blunt is in there as she's married to John Krasinski. But you have a bunch of other people. George Clooney does a bit.
Right. And then also Brad Pitt.
Yeah. There's a lot of people doing these voices, and it's really cute. The character. So that's I think what people were thinking when they compare it to Pixar, because Pixar always has that group of cars or a group of monsters or the fish in the fish tank. You know, there's all these great little sort of voice cameos. But that's not what the movie's about. It's really about this girl dealing with it.
And I'll tell you, Kev, even though we might talk about her in the podcast, I don't know much about her, but she was 15 when she did this role.
Yeah.
And my gosh, what a great little actress.
She's
Haley
good.
Fleming.
She's good.
I thought she was excellent, yeah.
Yeah.
And the cutest outfits I've seen in a long time. With
Yeah.
the suspenders, and everyone is in a different, almost each shot is different.
Yeah, well, you know, they actually, that's something when you get into the, you know, beyond just the dramatics and the script and stuff, the costume design is really clever.
Yeah, it is. And you mentioned the driving force here, John Krasinski.
Well, yeah, he wrote and directed, he plays the dad.
Well, don't you think that's a driving force?
I definitely think so, yeah. Well, and what's interesting is I remember watching this and thinking, it reminded me of when he did that during the pandemic. He did this YouTube series called Some Good News.
Oh.
And it was basically, because, you know, you're getting bombarded by bad news every day about everything. And so he, you know, and nobody was working, everyone was at home, so he had people send him stories over Twitter that would say, this is what, you know, these are stories that made me smile, or, you know, good stories. And so he did kind of like this newscast. It was cheesy as all get out. It was corny. But you can tell that's what he was going for. He was going for something uplifting. And that feels like this is definitely from the same guy who did that.
Oh, yeah. I have to say I admire him starting way back in The Office. I think he had.
Oh, yeah, and The Office was really where he broke out.
And as you mentioned, Emily Blunt is his wife.
Yeah.
And the two of them.
Good on you, yeah.
The two of them have done one of the best horror films I've seen.
Well, that's really when he broke out as a director, was because that's when he did A Quiet Place.
Yeah.
And that's I think why it's impressive for him to go to this, because he just didn't do another horror film. And I'm not going to slag on anybody, but like Jordan Peele, for example, has a real love of horror, so all of his stuff has that element to it. But when he followed up Get Out with Us, they were very similar movies. This is very different than A Quiet Place.
Yeah.
So it's him doing. I don't think he wants to be pigeonholed as a horror.
Right. Yeah. So he's having a lot of opportunities, and I think relatively successful in all of them. Even you talk about his telephone addresses with all these voices that he gets. The people like to say, you know, that these are all his friends, and the Clooney and the rest of them.
Oh, sure.
About the idea that you have to remain youthful. Is it
Yeah.
here?
Well, I mean, it's first of all, I described this movie to my wife when I came home, and I said, it feels like a children's book was written, because sometimes children's books are written and they have some real fantastic stuff, and the why and the explanation behind it is very rightfully kind of glossed over and not going. Because if you do a deep dive into this, it gets very depressing. Because you the world is overrun with all these depressed imaginary friends who have nowhere to go, and you're like, that really it's sort of like if you go to like the Pixar movies, you don't want to think too much about the cars because in the movie Cars they have a character that was in World War II. So then was there a Hitler car? And was he running over Europe, and was there a car genocide going on? You don't want to deep dive into this stuff, and that's kind of how I felt with this, that it presented as like, just accept it, don't think too far on it.
Well, Kev, we're talking about sickness.
Yeah.
She's death. She lost her mother.
Well, that's Disney going all the way back.
But look at that. I mean, this movie, that we're talking about, is actually depressing. If you take a deep dive, and Dad is in a hospital.
Well, and that's the thing. As uplifting and as as much as the movie smiles at you, there's some dark stuff in there.
Yeah.
Because you are dealing with grief and trauma, and that's that's always sort of these fantastical elements are often used as a symbol of getting past that.
The idea of losing friends, even if you don't consider them imaginary.
Yeah.
But you've got these kids growing up and kind of leaving their imaginary friends behind. Figuratively, it's not a stretch to think about anybody who grows up and loses friends.
Well, that's part of it. Part of growing up is you change and your friends change and you mature. And we have all known people who you see them and you're like, you've lost your sense of humor. And you've met people who've changed and grown out of the thing that brought you together. And so, yeah, of course, that's symbolic of every relationship that everybody has.
But we don't want to keep people from seeing this film.
No.
We want them to go to WCBE.org and check out our podcast,
Yes.
Back Talk, because we're going to talk a little bit more about this film.
Mm-hmm.
It's called If. Kev, what do you say? It's summer, and we haven't had any really great movies yet, I don't think. What do you suggest then for a family?
It's a little overly sweet. do be prepared for it. There might be more cheese in the Garfield movie next week, but there's a lot of cheese in this one. But it's, for a family, I think for the family crowd, I think it's worth checking out.
Yeah, and for your cynical teens, there's the dark side we talked about. Right?
Wait till it comes out on video, and then you can riff on it with your friends.
It's movie time with John DeSando and his friends online. So everything is gonna be just fine. From the top down to the